Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, A Different Life. Today we're going to leave the boat and take a walk around the small town of Tobermory, which is the main town on the island of Mull in Scotland, off the west coast of Scotland. Lovely island and a lovely town, famous for its colourful houses on the waterfront on the main street right beside the harbour. Our walk's going to begin by walking through the pontoons of the marina, across the car park, up to the top of the embankment behind the main street, and we'll walk along the road up there with some lovely views over the bay where the boat currently is. After walking along that street, we'll come down to the main street and we'll take a full walk for the full length of the main street, and you'll see what I mean by the colourful houses, etc. This was filmed in the second week of September, so the normal tourists of the summertime are not so prevalent. The weather started to change a little bit and the summer holiday traffic is no longer in full bloom, as it were. There was, at the end of my period here, a large ocean cruising liner moored out in the bay, and several hundred people came ashore from that each day that it was here. Fortunately, it was only here for 2 or 3 days, so it didn't bother me too much, but it certainly changed the busyness of the town, and I would imagine in the height of summer it's a busy little place altogether, but as you'll see from the walk around, it wasn't too bad. One of the things that I always try hard to get across is I live as a liveaboard on this boat. It's a 1986 Moody 47 for those that are interested, and I've fully refurbished it, and I live year round on this boat, cruising around the islands in the summertime, and for 6 months in the winter I stay in marinas, usually a different marina every winter. Well, what I'm trying to do in most of my videos is to get the flavour of what life is like living on a boat. For example, right now we're looking at my dinghy, which is what I use to get from the boat to the shore when I go ashore. And getting on that dinghy, I have to climb down the ladder, as you've seen, at the back of the boat, and get myself organised into the little, it's called a rib, rigid inflatable boat, the small grey one here. And I have an electric outboard motor on that powers the small dinghy and I can use that to get to the shore. I can recharge that electric outboard motor on the main boat here, which you can see we're leaving. And you'll see the typical kind of journey that I have from a mooring ball, in this case at Tobermory, to the pontoon. Living on a boat's a very peaceful experience. I gave up owning and using a vehicle, a car, because it was too much hassle as I moved the boat from location to location, dealing with a car that was on land and had to be left all the time. So now I have the peace and the tranquility that comes with not having to drive on the roads, which I'm sure everybody can relate to. The level of angst, excuse me, the level of angst in driving on modern road traffic, particularly here in Britain, where everybody drives very fast on small windy roads. You know, the stress associated to that is not really a very healthy experience all in, and I'm quite sure that as well as the other aspects of a balanced lifestyle, I'm very conscious of my diet, my sleep pattern, etc., my exercise. It is a very peaceful experience to go to the shore, for example, in what's the equivalent of a car for me, the little grey boat here. The peace and the quiet and the tranquility and the no traffic, plus the savings financially. I mean, I don't have to concern myself with the upkeep of a vehicle, which is, you know, another win-win situation for me in this lifestyle. But one of the other advantages of this kind of living is I get exposed to a lot of wildlife, birds and animals. Fantastic. So here we are on the pontoon in the marina, making our way ashore there's a car park here beside the marina, the white marina office, and we're going to go through the car park and head for the path that runs up to the back of the embankment behind the main street of the town here. It's a busy little spot here. There's a farmer's market in place in this little car park. I think it happens once a week. I can't remember if it's a Monday or not. I think it is a Monday. But here we are, we're off on this little walk, a lovely little walk up this embankment on this little walkway. It's only a couple of 100 yards to get up to the top, which you'll see in a minute or two. And when we do get to the top, you'll get a chance to see not only the views out over the bay, but the kind of living situations that people who stay in a small town like this in rural northern Scotland, the kind of environment that they live in, the kind of houses, streets, etc. And I'm always very interested in how people live and the different approaches and styles of living that they have. And having travelled several different parts of the world, there's a certain level of uniqueness to the kind of situation that we're about to see here. This is rural Scotland with old buildings that date back a considerable number of decades, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There's an element of peace. Today it's not raining, which is unusual for Scotland. Well, it's not actually. That's not fair. In the summertime, the weather is quite good here in Scotland. In the wintertime, that's not the same story, but that's another issue. So we're coming up this lovely little walkway path. Very soon now we'll break out into the end of the road which runs along the top of the embankment in parallel to the main road, which is down lower beside the shore. And I'm really trying to give you a feel for how lovely a town this is. We're only 200 yards from the town centre, and lovely trees and nature and a beautiful environment all around. Fantastic. So I've speeded things up a little bit here. We're about to break out on the top of the embankment. You can see that we have open views now over the bay. There's the marina down there where the boat is, and that's at one end of the bay of the main street and just spanning around. It's a lovely environment. Here's the edge of the gardens of the houses that sit up here with the view over the bay. And you can see the architecture's old. The houses have been around a long time. The streets are small and narrow. They have little gardens out front, and then at the other side of the garden there's an abrupt drop of a couple of 100 feet down to the main road alongside the shore. And I really wanted to show this little road because I think a lot of people come to Tobermory and they only really walk along the main street. And they don't realise, for the sake of climbing up a couple of 100 feet up the embankment to this road, they can enjoy some spectacular views out over the bay and the Sound of Mull. And as you can see, it's drop dead gorgeous scenery. It's fantastic. Quiet, peaceful, ye olde. We're starting to see some colour in the houses up here, although there's much more colour down in the main street. Palm tree, which the west of Scotland is known for, despite its high latitude. It's a mild, temperate climate with a heavy rainfall, which is good for growth. You can see the lushness of the plants, etc. around about. You can see the old stone dikes here, typical of older Scottish towns and villages. And along at the end here, there's a little Tobar. It's a little cafe, and I have to say this is the best coffee and the best home baking in town, despite not being on the main drag. It's situated in this old school building. I don't know if it was a school once upon a time or not, but nowadays it's a cafe. The coffee's good. The staff are very nice and friendly. There's a little fire that's on inside usually. And just a lovely little community centre with reasonably priced coffee, which is good, as I've mentioned, and nice cakes to eat if you're into that kind of thing. Much better than the cafes down on the main street, I have to say. So worth the walk up here. I was fascinated by this seat. Once upon a time this has been a boat, and it's been cut in half and made into a little seat. It's a pretty unusual approach to ending a boat's life. Lovely little spot though, very, very pleasant, well worth the visit. Well worth the visit. So now we're headed back down this little lane, which is actually steeper than it looks on the film here, down the embankment to the main street, which we'll break out to in a minute or two. As you can see, throughout this town there's lovely views. We're looking at all the boats moored in the bay. One of those boats is my boat. Lovely view eastwards, little islands in the distance, the mainland and beyond that in the very far distance, and just very, very picturesque. The old stone walls, as I mentioned earlier, typical of Scottish rural environments, where these old stone walls, or dikes as they're called colloquially, have been around for a long time, and in many places have been well maintained. Scotland, the housing stock in Scotland, particularly the older houses, tend to be made from stone, one of the abundant materials which is around this part of the world. But it's a lovely little lane. It's going to go around the bend here, and then we'll come down to the main street. You can see the roofs of the houses, the buildings on the main street straight ahead. Little pier over there in the about top centre of the frame. And you can see we open out with a more clear view of the bay here, and you can see what I mean when I continue to refer to this embankment. It is rather a steep treed embankment that separates the harbour side from the rest of the town, which is up the hill here. And you can see we're looking at that church spire level with it before we get further down here and break out through into the main street. No cars come down this part. This is a walkway only, and as you can see, it's adjacent to quite a number of interesting older buildings that have various purposes. I love the way the trees and the bushes are and the old stonework are all part of the environment, even in the town centre here. I mean, it's a very nice perspective. And you can see we're coming right down to the level of the main street in a minute or two here. We're going to be back in the so-called thick of things, although it's not really very busy, as you'll see in a second. We're going to break out on the main street about halfway along. Before we head back to the pontoon and the boat, I'm going to take a little walk along to the pier, where there's another coffee house which lies at one end of the main street that circles the harbour here, and we'll check it out. So this is the pier cafe at the old pier at the one end of the main street in Tobermory here. And a quick look around at the bay. You can see the boats over on the other side of the bay, one of which is mine, of course, and looking back along the main street with all the coloured houses. Very, very nice situation. So as we walk along the main street here, it reminds me of why I live this lifestyle. You know, not that long ago when I say not that long ago, a decade ago and more, when I decided that life was really too short to spend it doing things I didn't really fully believe in or want to do. I got my first boat, lived on it in California for several years, but now that I live on my current boat in Scotland, the boat's called Sorsa, which is a Gaelic word, Scottish Gaelic word, which actually means freedom. And I call it Sorsa, or freedom, because it really represents the point where I've said goodbye to the normal way of living, and I've embraced the freedom of not having the ties and the attachments in a material sense or in a worldly sense in the way that most people do. It struck me that a lot of people never really get to enjoy themselves to their full potential because they're so busy making money and chasing this and chasing that and wanting this and wanting that. And I really decided that wasn't for me. I wanted to live my life with the joy and the peace of nature and the tranquility of places like this. And I've never regretted that. It's a fantastic way of living for those that are inclined to live this way. And what can I say? No stress, happiness, freedom, nature, simplistic lifestyle. There's a lot to be said for it. So on the main street here, there are some very interesting little enterprises. There's a museum here. We're going to have a look at the map of Mull in the window of the museum. And further along, we're not going to look at the window, but there's a window that displays the current sea life sightings. For example, you know, you can see how recently whales have been seen in the vicinity and what type of whales they are, how recently seagulls have been seen, dolphins, porpoises, and it's pretty nice to be able to touch a piece of the world where that kind of event, you know, nature in its fullest splendor, is both respected and admired in a way that and available in a way that you can go out and see these creatures, if you're lucky, on a regular basis. I mean, I was quite surprised at the frequency of whale sightings, for example, in the neighbouring sound and sea waters. It's really pretty cool. So this is the other pier right in the middle of the main street in the town here, and we're just looking across to the marina and the boats and the bay. Lovely situation, just a gorgeous situation. Not too many people around at the moment, which suits me. It probably in a month's time will be very, very quiet as we enter the off season from a tourist perspective. I would guess in the busy part of the summer, where the tourists are in full swing, as it were, that it will be quite busy in this street. I'll bet there's a lot of boat traffic and people milling around. But you can see how lovely it is. I mean, the shops are right next to the harbour. There's some fishing activity, there's some general marine activity. It's a sheltered little spot. It's really a very, very pleasant place. If you're a boater or a yachting person, great place to stop and spend a few days. There are over a dozen swinging mooring balls available for rent on a nightly or weekly basis. There's the actual marina itself, which works on a first come first served basis for yachtsmen. And there's further out in the bay there are anchorages that you could just drop your own anchor and stay there. Again, I would expect in the middle of the season, in the middle of the high summer season, that the place will be busy with boats as well as with people, and I suspect there'll be times when it's not possible to get a swinging mooring because they'll all be taken. Likewise, because the marina operates on a first come first served basis, I would get here early if I was coming here in the summertime to make sure I got a space if I was dependent on being in the marina itself. Fortunately, my approach is not to use marinas really that much unless it's the winter time, in which case I book up for 6 months every winter and shelter from the weather and enjoy a more secure existence. So we've done a complete, or almost a complete circle now in our walk. We're back at the car park, or the entrance to the car park beside the marina. There's the old distillery here, which is probably worth a tour for those of you that like the whisky situation in Scotland, the home of whisky, and there are many islands throughout the west coast of Scotland that have their own distilleries, some of them world famous and some of them not so famous, but this is the one here in Tobermory, the car park beside the marina. And we're going to go back to my little boat, my little grey rib boat, and take it back out to my home, Sorsa. So here we are on our way back out to the boat Sorsa, to my home. I just want to thank everybody that's stayed and watched the video all the way through to this point. I've tried very hard to give a flavour, an authentic flavour for the village of Tobermory, the town of Tobermory, from a perspective of someone who arrives by boat, has to go through the machination of getting ashore, going for a walk in the town. A chance to look at it without the glitzy eyes of a tourism video or whatever. This is just a basic walk through the town, let you see what the town's about, give you a feel for the land, the part of the town that's up the embankment, that's not just the main drag. I suspect everybody that comes here just walks along the main street and pretty much stays there. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate that, and if you can subscribe and click like and leave any comments, that helps the performance of the channel in the YouTube situation. The more the merrier, as it were. So we'll wrap up with a view of the cruise liner that I alluded to earlier in the video with all the tourists. That's it, sitting out in the bay. Thanks, have a great day or whatever you're doing, and we'll see you next time.